we're back.
Oh, man. Welcome back, everybody.
Shop Talk.
Shop Talk.
Episode 12.
Episode 12. I'm here with
sir.
Bacardi.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We're excited to have you once again, as always. You know, we were talking about, off camera and some of the different types of careers that's out there.
Right.
In this show, you can see that we touch topics on different areas of expertise,
Right.
different kind of career paths.
Educators.
Mayors.
Yes.
Politicians.
Yes, sir.
I mean, MRI techs, you know what I'm saying? And today, we are going to be talking about a pretty cool career, journalism.
Right.
Huh? I mean, does this qualify? This qualifies?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. And this is always something that, has interested you.
Yes. Yes. Because I went to school for communications. I also wanted to do journalism when I was younger, more into the radio field instead of TV and stuff like that.
Right.
So, yeah.
But it all kind of connects. It's in the entertainment industry, right? Because
Absolutely.
a good journalist, he's trying to captivate your attention.
Right.
He's trying to get your undivided attention so you don't get lost in the story, the article, whatever it is. Today's guest is one of my clients. He's so freaking awesome. And a lot of times, we don't even listen to music. Sometimes we do. We can listen to because we always got something playing on in the background.
Right.
And a lot of times, it bounces different genres. And
Yes,
a lot of
sir.
times, he'll recognize a hit and be like, man, I haven't heard that song in a long time. But the point is we vibe, we have conversations, and I'm so curious about his career.
Right.
I know that this gentleman wrote news articles for the Leader Herald, which is a local newspaper in this
Right,
area.
a prominent local newspaper, yeah.
They did just sell to the Gazette, but I think it was a good sale.
Right,
It wasn't no bad blood. But we'll touch on that too. We'll ask
Absolutely.
Mr. Anich about that.
And a lot of journalists and reporters don't get the due respect that they do. No one gives them a spotlight. They're always doing the spotlight on someone.
That's
so
right.
This time it's vice versa.
Yes,
We're going to do a spotlight on the journalist.
Right,
and the
right.
reporter. That's
yes,
right.
sir. And we have some questions. Off camera, we were talking about journalism is a huge responsibility.
Absolutely.
I mean, you got to make sure that the information is accurate.
That's right.
You got to make sure that there's no defamation. You have to make sure that
You have to give it from a non-biased point of view. So
yes, people will read right through that.
Absolutely.
If it's biased, they're gonna say this is one-sided,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Without any further ado, let's get Mr. Anich over here.
Absolutely.
All right, Mr. Anich, come on over, sir.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Welcome to the show. Good. Nice to meet you as well. Make yourself comfortable.
Okay, we got Mr. Anich.
Yes,
Give him a
sir.
round of
Let's
applause.
give him a round of applause, you guys. Come on, give him a round of applause.
Yes. Man, this is an interview that's been a long time coming. We've been talking about this, right, for a little bit now, and you'll see that this is just like we are at the chair.
Yep.
We're just having a regular
that's
conversation. I thought that your career, the stuff that you did was so interesting, and it's a career that if you want to do that, that you want to do that from an early age, right?
Yeah, I'm from Niagara Falls originally, from Western New York,
Okay.
and where I lived in Niagara Falls, our family got two newspapers at the time in the '60s. I'm 67 now, but back in the '60s, we got the Courier Express and the Buffalo News. And when I was 7 years old, I used to put the Courier Express, the morning paper, out on the carpet and read news, sports, everything.
Right.
Immerse myself in it when I was 7 or 8 years old.
Wow.
And when I was 10 years old, we lived on 93rd Street in Niagara Falls, and I one day when I was as an adult, my mother said, "Oh, Mike, I want to show you something." And it was a newspaper that I had written. I had used a typewriter, and I had written the 93rd Street Times. In other words, I had interviewed neighbors, done stories about some Joe Smith down the street bought a new car or something, and I wrote a little article about it. So
Wow, look at that.
At a young age.
At a young age.
So anyway, I don't know if that answers your question, but I always was interested in journalism.
That does answer the question. You knew you wanted to do this at an early age.
And you followed your dreams.
You followed your dreams. So
Yeah, I did. I stayed local. I can say that in 37 years as a reporter, I covered a lot of stuff. For a local guy. So.
Now, I told the people that you worked for the Leader Herald. Was that the only news publication that you worked for?
Yeah. I graduated from SUNY Fredonia in '84, and within a month or so, I had gone through a couple interviews with other places, but the Leader Herald interviewed me, and I came out here from Western New York and went through a couple interviews and was hired and stayed here till.
Oh, so that's how you came to Gloversville?
Yeah.
Wow.
I just applied to the Leader Herald. I didn't know where Gloversville was, and
Right.
had to look at a map and all that. And yeah.
Wow, I'm glad they hired you because
Yeah.
I got to meet you and your son. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
a while ago, his son Sean,
Okay.
awesome guy. Also, we came up with this because he told me he was going to school for.
Communicate. Well, he went for communications.
Okay. Yeah.
So we were talking like radio stations
Right,
and this
right,
and
right.
that, and I think you and I even
Yes,
talked about
absolutely.
that. But this was like when I was still cutting hair out of my house,
Right.
and he mentioned he was going to school to do this and that, and I was like, man, it would be so cool if you had your own radio station.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And
Well, we both did broadcasting in college. I mean, I was on the college radio station
Right.
for 4 years, and he was too at Oswego. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, would you say that your choice in careers may have persuaded him a little bit as far as
I
broadcasting
mean, I
goes?
think
and
I think so.
journalism?
He's his own person, and he is a lot different from me in a lot of ways. But he's also similar in that he likes current events, he likes sports. He's kind of a complete person as far as being interested in music and sports and news. And,
Yeah, definitely.
So,
awesome.
yeah.
Guy. Now, how long did you work for the Leader Herald?
So 37 years from
Wow.
June '84 to July of 2021, when the Gazette bought the Leader Herald.
That's when you decided that you were going to
Well,
retire.
we were let go by.
Okay.
I mean, they hired us and basically fired us, and
Oh,
it was
wow.
like 60 people at the Leader Herald,
Oh,
and they said, "Oh, within 2 weeks you're out of a job," and.
Oh wow.
wow.
So I kind of unceremoniously left. My wife also worked there. She was the circulation director at the time. But we've both kind of bounced back and gotten jobs since then.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So you're not fully retired then, right?
No, I'm working part-time
Yeah.
for the Gloversville School District in the kitchen at the middle school.
Yeah.
Okay.
I always tell him when he gets his haircut, "You're so lucky because school food is so good." I miss the pizza.
You like the pizza?
I
man.
love the pizza.
We always say that.
Yeah.
The pizza was the best.
It was the best.
Friday's pizza day.
Oh man.
We're gonna have to sneak in on Friday now.
Or bring a slice, you know.
maybe.
You're retired now. You're working. What types of things are you doing? Like, do you miss journalism? Do you still maybe you still think about, man?
You know, it's interesting that you asked that. Like, I've been watching on CNN, they have a show that runs on Sunday night with Jake Tapper called The United States of Scandals.
Yes.
And I've been watching it, and Sunday night, a couple nights ago, they had Elliot Spitzer, and I interviewed Elliot Spitzer
Wow.
in 2008, I think, or 7, I don't remember exactly. He came here for Fulton County Democratic Committee picnic at the Pleasant Square Fire Department, and he was there, Carl McCall, some other people, but he was the Attorney General at the time, and I know this is a long way of answering your question, but I was just thinking of that the other night, how that was so cool. That was of all the political people I've interviewed, that might have been the most fun interview I did.
Really?
Because we sat down at a picnic table, I had my notepad, and he pulled up in this like fancy car. It was like, it said like New York Re or something. And we sat down and we talked. And I think at the time I remember asking him whether he was going to run for governor, because that was the big question.
Right.
And he said, "No, I can't talk about that right now." And then he started telling me about his children, his girls. And I had 2 children at the time. And I said, he pulled out pictures of his girls. And I said, "Oh, Mr. Spitzer, here's pictures of my kids." You know, we were sitting there at a picnic table. And the thing I took from that interview was what a nice family man he was.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
And what a nice family man that was eventually got caught up in a prostitution scandal.
Yeah.
So anyway, those kind of, to answer your question, there's certain things, and you can ask me anything you want about the 37 years I was doing this, but there's certain things that just really stand out in my mind that were like really a lot of fun.
Right.
Wow. Yeah. No.
So I still kind of miss some of those things, and I was
Right.
just reminded of that when watching Jake Tapper's show the other night.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to write a story on someone that maybe you went to school with, grew up with, or
Well,
someone
I
that
d-
you knew very well?
Personally, yeah.
Yeah. Like,
See, I didn't grow up around here.
that's true. Yeah.
I guess the answer is no. I've got to know a lot of people. Over the years, over 37 years, you get to know a lot of people.
How about, have you ever written an article that got you in hot water? And what I mean by that, this could
Many.
be many.
Yeah, I mean,
We both said yes. Yes.
I got in the 80s, like I went from my 20s to my 60s being a reporter. So in my 20s, in the 80s, okay, I was a young reporter, and the school district superintendent for Gloversville was a guy named George Kral. And I did a story it was one of my first big breaking stories as a young reporter,
Right.
was that they found scraps of leather underneath the playground at Kingsborough School.
Wow.
And I got a hold of a document and blah, 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 and put the story together. And anyway, he came into our office. This was back in the days when you could just walk up to the third floor of the Leader Herald building and nobody stopped you.
Right.
Later in the years, there was a little more security. But so he came up there, and he came marching right up to my desk, and he said something about he was going to see to it that I was fired if I wrote any more stories about that. And the publisher, who was down the hall, came in, Bill Kessler at the time, and said, "You do not threaten our reporter, and if you'd like to leave, Mr. Kral, you can leave," and that kind of thing. I mean, that's just one example, and I'm
Yeah.
not picking on George Kral. I don't even know what happened to him. He might be
Right.
deceased for all I know. But I had an economic development. You know how there's the CRG now, right? It used to be called the EDC.
EDC, yeah.
Right, and I better not mention names, but one of the high executives one time, I got onto a story. I used to break certain stories about companies coming here.
Right.
And that was a lot of fun for me to try to figure out who was the EDC bringing here as a company. And I'm trying to remember the name of the company, and I can't remember right now. I can't remember. It was one of the Johnstown Industrial Park companies. One of the EDC guys on the phone told me that if I ran the story, I was asking him questions on the phone, and he said if I run that story, he was going to have me fired. And I said, well, go ahead,
Right.
be my guest. My editors and publishers support me in my quest for
Yeah.
breaking these stories. So.
Yeah, this
And I ended up breaking the story, and there was a company coming. I think it was called Post Distribution or something. And then the guy was nice to me after that. So I find that in journalism. I found that in journalism over the years that there was a mutual respect. Like they treated you. Some of these high officials, whether economic development or political officials.
Right.
Would sometimes really look down their nose, or police, police,
Right.
look down their nose at you. They acted like, oh, you're just, kind of the gum under my shoes.
Right.
But if you wrote a story and you got their attention, and they liked the fact that you were tenacious in getting the story,
Right.
there was like a whole new level of respect that you gained from that.
Yeah.
Nice. Was there ever a story that was just, you had to get it done, it had to be written, but it was hard?
Scandalous or something that was really.
Scandalous. When I think of scandalous, I don't know if this is the right word to use, but when in 2006, I wrote 26 stories that summer about Tryon.
Okay.
You guys know what Tryon
Yes,
is?
absolutely.
Okay,
Right.
right.
Everybody know Tryon is a juvenile delinquent
Correctional facility.
Was, yeah.
It's
Right,
no
was,
longer
right.
there. But go ahead.
And in 2005, a kid had died. A 15-year-old
Right.
kid had been, I don't know, they put I don't know if it was a chokehold or something. Then eventually the kid died. So anyway, the state had kind of their eyes on Tryon. And so the following year, my editors said, all right, let's do some stories on Tryon. And I did literally, like I said, 26 stories that summer. And I wrote stories interviewing both the staff, just interviewing anybody I could. Commissioner of the Office of Children and Family Service, that was the state office that oversaw places like Tryon. She would not allow me to interview her, either by phone or go to Albany and interview her. I couldn't interview her because she was mad that I was like stirring up stuff.
Or exposing.
Yeah, exposing what was going on at Tryon, because these stories like really hit home. And
Yeah.
by the time I was done with like 20th story or so, I mean, people were really getting the impression the place was a hellhole. And so one day, again, my My son says I ramble sometimes, and I'm sorry. You can.
No, you're
it's
good.
fine.
Okay,
You're
all right.
good.
So
You're gonna ramble. This is the place to ramble.
Well, okay. So one at the time, I worked in the satellite office in Johnstown. During my career, I worked both in Gloversville and Johnstown. But at that time, in 2006, I worked in Johnstown, and all of a sudden, I'm sitting at my computer, and in walks Mark Butler, the assemblyman, and Hugh Farley, the senator. And they come back and they go, Mike, can we talk to you? And they both had like these big smiles on their face. And they go, and Hugh Farley goes, oh, you deserve a Pulitzer for what you're doing at Tryon, because
Wow.
they were, and I laughed about
That's
it.
huge.
Yeah.
Well, I just kind of laughed about it, and they said, "Did you know we just came from office?" And she said, "I will never, ever talk to that effing guy from the Leader Herald." And so, you say scandal. I mean, what happened eventually was that they fired, and I can't remember his name. They fired the director of Tryon. Mm-hmm. Not long after my stories ran, they fired the director, and by 2010, Andrew Cuomo was governor, and he shut the place down.
Right.
Now, it wasn't my intention to see the place shut down.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it as a useful place for employment, and it employed a lot of people,
Right.
Yeah,
a lot of people
absolutely.
in the area. But I had a job as a journalist to take what my editors said and find out what's going on at Tryon.
Right.
Wow.
So I was kind of proud of that. I never really submitted for any award for any of that or anything, but I think I probably...
Man, let's give him a round of applause for that, Bacardi. Come on.
Absolutely. Now, did you get any threats behind that story or anyone?
Those stories, not that,
Okay.
but do you remember the KKK stories I wrote?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that series?
That wasn't that long ago,
yeah.
right?
Okay, yeah, that was later in my career in 2017.
Yeah.
And can I take this opportunity to explain? I've never actually
No, please,
explained
please.
explained what I was doing at that time. What happened was in early 2017, like February or something,
Right.
the KKK was putting leaflets on cars.
I remember
In
that.
fact, they even put one on the front of the Leader Herald building.
Right.
In fact, that's what got my attention. I walked in one morning and there's a KKK leaflet. And so, we started learning that they were doing it in Montgomery County and that kind of thing. So I said to my editors, I said, you know what? The only way that we can do this story justice is to interview some KKK members and see what their intentions are.
Wow.
And I thought it merited like a 3 or 4 day series. And my editor said, "All right, go ahead, go see what you can do."
That's
I
efficient.
got on the phone. Normally, I don't tell my methods here, but
Right.
it's so the time has passed so much that I could reveal what happened here. I got on the phone to a phone number on the back of one of that brochure that I found
Right.
on the window of the Leader Herald. Called, got some guy that sounded like a redneck or something. It was from North Carolina. He was from North Carolina, and he said, "Oh, you want to interview somebody?" And I said, "Yeah." And he was kind of a jerk and everything. But he said, "All right, I'll call you back at this number in like 5 days." So he called me back like 7-8 days later. He said, "This is where they're going to be," and I interviewed them, and they were in Gloversville in a wooded area, and I went there on a early Sunday morning, took their picture, and I took a lot of pictures during my
Right.
37 years.
Right.
Wow.
So I lined them up. I lined up these 4 KKK members
Right.
with their robes and their hoods and took their picture, interviewed a couple of them, did a story, and then I balanced it out by interviewing some other people.
Right.
Some prominent black people in the community and some other people that I thought were important to this series.
Right. Absolutely.
So what happened was this thing ran, and I was proud of it. I was really proud of it. The reaction was unbelievably negative.
Wow.
Unbelievably negative. It was like you would have thought that I was a racist. You would have thought that I was a KKK member. Oh, you're doing nothing but the Leader Herald's doing nothing but publicize the KKK. What's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? Why did that have to run? Why did you have to run those idiots' pictures on the front page? Whoever I tried to personally explain to
Right.
that I was just trying to do my due diligence as a
Yes.
journalist and get the word out as to what was going on in the community. I did what I thought was a good job on that. Quoted these guys as saying that there was a certain presence in the area. And again, people were responding, letters to the editor of the paper saying, we don't need these kind of people in the community. Why are you giving them a
Platform, if you will.
bully pulpit,
Right.
right? So that was, to this day, I just had a lot of negativity about that. I have a brother that lives in Northern California, and he visited me right after that series ran, and I was showing him the series, and he goes, "Oh," he lives just north of San Francisco.
Right.
He goes, "Mike," if this ran like in the San Francisco Examiner or something, they'd be like giving you an award for this
Absolutely.
thing. They'd be like glad that their community, like you were shining a light on
Yes.
what's going on in your community." And I said,
As you should.
"Around here in Fulton County."
So
anyway.
It's different.
Sometimes things like, I feel like in this area, people come to the realization afterwards.
Yes.
You know that, man, we had gold
Right.
here. You
Right,
know, like
right.
that was actually a legendary story.
Absolutely.
I think that like
Well,
sometimes
thank you. I mean, it wasn't. I don't know if it was legendary, but it was.
I think it was.
it was the first
I
time
think
it's
it
ever
was.
been done in
Absolutely.
the area. You know,
And
it's
to expose that,
Well, the reaction that I got was so negative
Mm-hmm.
that the story became about me, which I told my publisher. I said, I do not. This is not about me. This is
Absolutely.
about these people
exactly.
called the KKK, right?
Yeah.
And what they are. Why are they in the area? What
In
are
New
they?
York.
Why are they? Yeah. Why are they putting leaflets on cars?
Yeah.
I said, this is not about me. And what happened was the New York Times, CBS News, some foreign paper from Ireland, a bunch of news outlets around the world literally wanted to interview me
Wow.
because I became the story.
Yeah.
And I told my publisher I'm not going to do any
Yeah,
of them.
yeah.
I'm not doing any of them. And I didn't do any of them. I didn't do any of the
Yeah.
interviews.
wow.
Understandably. Understandably.
Anyway,
Wow.
the
He's
story
had
how I know.
37 years of experience over here. You know, there's at least one real good story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I got to tell you, Mr. Anish actually came through for the shop one
Right,
time.
right.
You probably remember we were doing a Christmas
Oh, the Santa.
Santa and Friends,
Mm-hmm.
right? And word got out.
I
Next
took a
thing-
lot of pictures
Yeah.
for the paper, and I was
Right.
proud of a lot of them. I was actually proud of the one I took of you. And
I appreciate that.
I,
Thank you
in
very
fact,
much.
I suggested that picture. I said, you know, Mike down the street is doing this really nice thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it turned out well.
He did that, man. Thank you so much for
Oh, no,
that,
that's
man.
okay.
That is so awesome. Yeah, no, I have the articles. You know, every time we've made it into the newspaper, I got all the newspaper clippings.
That's great.
I didn't save a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I have a
I'm
bunch.
surprised as a journalist.
I hardly-
thought you would.
I hardly no, because you know what? I for a while I put boxes of stories of mine in the cellar.
Okay.
And my wife and I just said, you know what? We're never going to read these. Our grandkids, whoever they are someday, are
They're not
never,
gonna read
probably
it.
not going to read these. Some of the stuff's on the internet, but
Right.
you can just look, search Mike Anich,
Yes.
Michael Anich, and you'll come across my stories. But so I didn't really save a lot. I saved certain things, like
Right.
when 911 happened, we all kind of sprang into action to do stories that morning, and I did a story about a Gloversville woman that was married to a guy at the Pentagon that got injured in the Pentagon
Trade.
Right, when
Pentagon
the
attack.
plane.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got on the phone to her and stuff. I saved that story. I saved certain stories over the years that I was
Yeah.
kind of proud of. I did a bunch of stories in 2015 about Sawyer Fredericks.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
singer.
yeah, the American Idol.
Yeah.
Or no, it was actually The Voice.
The
So-
The voice. That's right. It was the
All
voice.
right.
Yeah.
Sorry, American Idol.
So those are some of the fun things I saved, and I also in my from '88 to 2001, I did music reviews, and I did reviews at SPAC, and I went to the Times Union Center, and which was what it was called back then,
Right.
and Proctor's, and did those kind of things. So reviewed different shows,
Right.
and so I saved a lot of that stuff.
How many years of school did it take for you to
No, I
get
just
the
4 year degree.
4-year degree in journalism?
And yeah, I was actually a broadcasting major with a minor in journalism, but it was a communications degree. But
Yeah.
How difficult is the schooling from what you remember? You know,
it wasn't hard for me because I think I was just it was something I wanted to do. I mean, I'm a Navy veteran.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah, I did 4 years in the Navy,
Right.
and then I went to college. But I was a weatherman in the Navy.
Right.
So when I was 18 years old, I knew I wanted to go in the Navy, but I wanted journalism school, and they said, you can't get journalism school. It's just all filled up or something, And so I became like a weatherman or something. But I knew that after the 4 years were up that I wanted to go to college, so I ended up getting my bachelor's and all that. But I guess my point is that it came pretty easy for me because, 8 years into my life, after 4 years of the service and 4 years of college, I knew what I wanted to do at
Right.
that point.
now as a reporter, do you know Spider-Man?
The movie.
Peter Parker. Right now, someone is out there. They're listening. They're watching.
Inspiring. Might want to be a journalist or a reporter.
Right. They might have thought about that in the past, or maybe are considering it now if they weren't considering it before. What is something that you might be able to tell that younger version of you that's maybe considering going down this path or a similar path?
Yeah, I had a feeling you might ask this, and I was thinking about this the other day, and I feel like I'm not totally in tune with the young reporters because technically things have changed a lot since there was no internet when I was a young reporter and stuff. So technically things have changed, which also kind of changes the way you gather news. But the basics, to answer your question, basically, I would advise anyone getting into journalism, and whether it's print or broadcasting, to immerse yourself in world events, definitely world events, like I did, like when I was little. But not only that, but the community that you're in. Like, say you get a job in Texas or Boston, Massachusetts, or anywhere, you get that first job, right? The thing that I would tell a young journalist would be learn everything you can about the community. Just learn. Read up, find out from historical people, anything about the community, because it'll help you in your job. And the other main thing I think would be to make sure that, and this is something that you can't really teach someone, you can kind of suggest to them that they don't take no for an answer when you're interviewing people. Don't give up. Don't give up. I mean, there comes a point where you got to stop, and you don't want to totally frustrate your news source, especially the police when you're interviewing them. They get very frustrated when you ask them like 20 questions. You want to just be tenacious. You gotta, this is a really awful thing to say, but you have to kind of grow a pair. You gotta. Editors of mine, older editors, when I first got to the paper, told me that many times, that look, if you think that you're going to be shy and all that, just forget it. You're going to interview. I mean, I interviewed Daniel Patrick Moynihan, the senator, in the 80s. I interviewed Al D'Amato, the senator. And just senators. I interviewed Chuck Schumer. I interviewed him for an hour straight at the Leader Herald office. Just me and him. And that was kind of cool. I never interviewed Hillary Clinton, but I interviewed our current senator.
Senator Tedesco?
No. U.S. Senator. Oh my gosh, never mind. The woman. Governors, I've interviewed Mario Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo, Elliot Spitzer, George Pataki many times, David Patterson. The current governor, believe it or not, I interviewed her when she was the lieutenant governor.
David
Kathy
Patterson,
Hochul.
he was blind, right?
Yeah, he was blind.
Oh, I remember him.
He had a short stint as
right after Elliot's.
Right after Elliot, that's right.
You have to, I mean, if you're going to interview these people, and I interviewed lots of Congress people too, including Elise Stefanik, and who I actually like, even though I'm kind of liberal.
I was going to say.
I have a liberal bent to me, like a lot of news people probably do. I interviewed John McHugh many times, the former congressman. You just have to, even though you may not feel like you're sometimes on the level of these people, like you're sitting there thinking, oh, holy crap! You have to ask tough questions. You have to do, you have to do your job. And it's the same with interviewing like the hospital administrator in your area, the ED, the economic development person, the mayor, the local high up people, the superintendents. You have to treat them with respect, but you also have to ask them tough questions. So immerse yourself. I would tell a young reporter, immerse yourself in the local community and current events, and also always remember that you have a job to do, and you cannot be shy. You can't be shy.
You gotta ask the questions.
You have to be outgoing.
You gotta grow a pair. You heard him. You gotta grow a pair.
Yeah, I interviewed a guy in Gloversville, a murderer, a guy that did his 25 years. This was in 1998. Did his 25 years. Got an apartment back in Gloversville. I walked in, and he bolted the door behind me. He had a pit bull sitting there next to him.
Oh, man.
And I'm thinking, oh, my God, this guy freaking stabbed a woman in the town of Johnstown, like in the 60s, 30 times. And I'm sitting here with him trying to interview.
Scary moments. Scary times.
Yeah, I had a lot of.
Well, listen, guys, you heard it from Mr. Anish. You gotta ask the difficult questions.
Yes, sir.
You have a job to do. You gotta fulfill that duty. If you have been thinking or considering a career in journalism, broadcasting, you got a general idea of more or less how this whole career works and what you are in for.
And can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
And that is, or just interject, and that is that journalism is a lot of fun, really. I mean, I'm talking about like some negative things and and crime and different things. But journalism, whether I had a lot of feature stories where I interviewed just lighthearted stories and things, and it's just a lot of, if you write a story and you use the words that kind of capture the mood of your interview and what you're trying to convey to the readers, it's just a tremendous amount of fun. That's
wow.
That's
Gotta be. It's gotta be. Imagine
Yes,
you
sir.
put that much effort,
Yes.
time, energy into, and all of a sudden, all right, send it.
Yeah.
Send it to the press, and it's getting printed out, and all these people are about to read this
That's right.
article.
That's
And then
right.
when you get like a positive feedback,
That's the
very
best reward.
fulfilling,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah.
It is very fulfilling. It makes you realize that you created something. Journalists create something. You are literally putting words on a page. You're creating something from scratch. They're paying like $1 for it or something, but you're creating something, and if it moves to the person that reads it, it's all worth it, and it's kind of fun.
Heck yeah. Freaking awesome, dude. Wow. Man, there you have it. We got Mr. Anderson. This is episode 12, my friends. You guys made it.
That's right.
We
Shop
made
Talk.
it. Shop Talk, baby. We want to thank you so much for joining
you're
us
welcome.
today.
Let's give him
It's
a
a lot of
round
fun.
applause.
Let's give him
Great
another
guest.
round
It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
It was
to
a
be here.
pleasure.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's awesome. And I'm glad that, today is Tuesday. We normally film on Saturdays. My man Bacardi was a little under the weather, but
Yes,
he
sir.
said, yo, listen, we're going to make it up. We're not going to skip
right.
and wait and reschedule him a month out.
That's
No,
right.
we're going to have a makeup day.
Yes, sir.
So we're here on a Tuesday. We made it happen. We finally got Mr. Anderson, the Oprah couches. Tune in for the next episode. We got a few awesome episodes lined up.
Yes, sir.
Beautiful guests. Wait until you meet them. And
That's it.
I think that's it. Let's
Yes.
We got the Shop Talk cups.
That's right. There you go, guys.
Oh man.
Thank you for tuning in.
Thanks.
Episode 12,
Absolutely.
my friends.
Great guests. We always have great guests. Always.
And and listen, if you want to be a guest on our show, hit us up.
That's it.
We want to hear from you. We want to hear your story.
Yes. Hit us up
You know,
directly. All
you
the
don't-
information is in the link. So
Yes. You don't have to be a journalist. You don't have to be a politician.
Nope.
You could be a student.
that's right.
You have a story that you want to share. We want to hear it. We also want to let you share it to the world.
Yes, sir.
All right. So thank you all once again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Peace out.
Peace.